Hey, 7th grade. So our learning target today is I can solve equations with fraction. So we'll have we might have one or more fractions in these problems. So it's just going to be the hand method. But what's going to be different in our work today is we're going to talk about how we can clear the fraction out or kind of kill the denominator right from the beginning. So as I look at this problem on the left here, I have 1/5 a plus 1 equals 3/10. My goal in this problem is to kill all denominators. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the idea of the distributive property. I'm going to put parentheses around the outside. Now, there are other ways to solve this. You could go to decimal form on everything. You could find common denominators, but I'm going to try to show you a way to do it without ever having to find a common denominator, without ever having to go to a decimal till the very end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify the two denominators that I have, 5 and 10. Rule of thumb says that we're going to take the bigger denominator and pull it outside to be distributed through. In this particular case, it's a 10. So I want you to pull the 10 on the outside. By the way, you don't actually have a worksheet to go with this, so you'll have to solve all of these on a separate sheet of paper and then be submitted to me as your retake option and your learning option. So what we're going to do is the idea of the distributive property, so we're going to send that in. So using my calculator, I'm going to type 10 times 1, go ahead and type it, 10 times 1, then divide by 5. So we go 10 times 1, divide by 5 gives me 2. Reattach the variable a gives me 2a. If I haven't used to drag it down, I drag that plus sign down, and then I take the 10 and multiply it in. So that's 10 times 1 is 10. Now this time in the distributive property, we're going to send it in to everything. Everybody gets the candy. So I take the 10 and multiply it into the final term. So we go 10 times 3, which is 30. Divide by 10 is 3. So what just happened here is it just cleaned out the denominators completely. That doesn't always happen on round 1. Sometimes you have to do more than one round to get that to happen. At this point, what we do is the hand method. So we're going to cover our variable anything attached. We're going to subtract 10, copy paste. If I haven't used it, drag it down. So we have a 2a. At any point, if I'm going too fast, you just simply push pause to catch up in your writing. I'm just going to keep going for the sake of it's a video. We have 0 coming out of this, and on the right-hand side, we have 3 take away 10 is -7. Now, our goal is to get the variable a totally alone, and it's not totally alone right now. So I'm going to divide by 2, copy, paste. So we end up with a equals -3.5. Notice I don't even have a decimal involved in the problem until the very last step of putting -7 divided by 2 in my calculator and convert from an improper fraction to a decimal. So what happened here is we killed the denominator by pulling the biggest denominator out front, sending it through to the idea of the distributive property, and then we just go hand method. So go ahead and catch up. If that was too fast, push pause. Make sure you're thinking through this whole process because this is all about learning right now in your retake process. So again, we're solving fractions today that are in equations. So we have hand method, but how do we kill the fraction first from the beginning? So this problem here, we're going to set up our idea of a distributive property, and this one might not work out as well for us. We'll see what happens. So we take the bigger of the two denominators. Right now my denominators are 5 and 7, so I'm going to take the bigger denominator, which is 7. And I'm going to send it through. So I'm going to pick up my calculator, and I'm going to go 7 times 2, divide by 5. Go ahead and type that in. 7 times 2, divide by 5. So you go 7 times 2, divide by 5, and you end up getting a decimal in that particular problem. So you have 7 times 2, divide by 5, and your calculator says 2.8, but I'm trying to get rid of icky numbers. I don't really want fractions. I don't really want decimals. I want whole numbers or integers. So in this particular case, I'm going to keep what I just typed in my calculator. So we had 7 times 2 is 14. Divide by 5, I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to get rid of it in the next round. I'm going to reattach the variable g. So just pull it down, reattach. If I haven't used it, drag it down +2. Nope, that's not true. Sorry, mistake there, mistake there. Be careful you don't make the same mistake I just did. We're going to take that 7 then and distribute it to the +2. So 7 multiplied by 2 is a 14. My fault. Make sure you don't do that mistake. Then we take 7 and we multiply it or distribute to the 4. So we have 7 times 4 is 28. Divide by 7 is 4. That turned out really nice for us. Notice the only thing I kept was that blue fraction up front, that 14 over 5, because it wasn't nice. I don't want the decimal. I want whole numbers and integers and things like that. So what we're going to do in this next step is we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did with the denominator of 7, and now we're going to pull it through with the denominator of 5. So we pull the 5 out front. We use the distributive property and we send it in. So we go 5 times 14 divide by 5. 5 times 14 divide by 5, and you should get 14. If this is too fast, go ahead and pause the video at any time. We're going to reattach the variable g. And if I haven't used it, drag it down, it's going to happen. But before I do that, I got to take the 5 and multiply it to the 14. So 5 times 14 is 70 first. And then we just pull that 70 with us. Then we take the 5 and we distribute it or multiply it to the 4, which is 20. And you'll notice now at this step, I'm left with the hand method. So I take my hand, cover the variable and anything attached, and it's like a stop sign. And I don't do anything for this. I want this to be totally alone. All right, here we go, 7th grade. So I will subtract 70, copy, paste. As I work left to right, if I haven't used it, I drag it down. So we say 14G. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, we have 20. Take away 70 is negative 50 and pause. Take a peek at that. The goal the entire time in solving an equation is to get the variable G alone. Right now it's not alone. So we're going to have to get rid of the 14 through the operation of division because we're trying to get rid of the multiplication, copy, paste. So we end up with G equals negative 50 divided by 14 is negative 3.57. I'm going to cut it off to the hundredths place, tenths, hundredths, cut it off. And because I rounded it, we should really use those approximately equal to values. So my approximate answer is negative 3.57. And again, our goal today is to get the variable alone by getting rid of the denominators. So we're trying to clear out denominators. All right, so we're going to try some more problems. You're going to be required to write the problem down because they're not on, we don't have any worksheets for this. So we have 2 more. Go ahead and write them down. I'll wait for you to get started. Go ahead and write them down. All right, here we go. So we have this hand method problem. We have 3 denominators this time, 4, 5, and 2, which means really we might have to send the denominator through 3 different times, 3 different rounds. So we're going to start with the biggest denominator, which is 5, and pull out front. We're going to send it in. We're going to go 5 times 3 is 15. Divide by 4. So we go 15 divided by 4, and we're trying to make sure that's a nice integer. And I end up with 3.75, which is gross. I don't want a decimal. I'm trying to stay away from decimals. So I'm going to leave exactly what I typed in my calculator, which was 5 times 3 is 15 over 4, and I'm just going to leave it. And I'll get that. I'll take care of that 4 in the next round. Distributive property, take that 5 and send it in. So we go 5 times 1 in the numerator. 5 times 1 is 5. Divide by 5 is 1. Reattach the variable n, becomes 1n. And on the last step, we say 5 times 1 is 5. Divide by 2. So we go 5 times 1. Divide by 2 gives you a decimal of 2.5. Well, I don't want a decimal. So I'm going to leave what I typed in, which is 5 over 2. 5 times 1 is 5 over 2, or 5 divided by 2. And then we pause and kind of look at what we have. We still have 2 denominators. So we need to kill the denominators by taking the next biggest. The next biggest one that's left, I have a 4 and I have a 2, is the 4. So I'm going to take the 4 and pull it out front. And I'm going to send it in. So we say 4 times 15 is 60. Divide by 4. So we have 4 times 15 is 60. Everybody should be typing in their calculator at this time. 4 times 15 is 60. Divide by 4 gives me 15. Send it in again. 4 times 1 is 4. Reattach the variable n. So 4 times 1 is 4. Reattach the n. And the very end here, we have 4 times 5 is 20. Divide by 2 is 10. So for the hand method here, I take my hand, cover the variable and anything attached. My goal is to get rid of the 15, so I'm going to subtract 15, copy, paste. The goal is to get the n totally alone. Right now we have to take some baby steps. We subtract 15, copy, paste. Again, if this is too fast, you're going to just have to push pause. If I haven't used it, drag it down. And on the right hand side, we have 10. Take away 15 is -5. The goal is to get the variable n alone. It's not alone right now. It's being multiplied by a 4. To get rid of multiplication by 4, I divide by 4, copy, paste. So I end up with n equals -1 point, go ahead and type that in, -1.25 should be your answer. So the variable n is equal to -1.25. Any questions on that? You should go ahead and pause the video. You should go back and try to solve, or make sure you ask me in class when you see me next. All right, here we go. Next problem, we're going to go ahead and draw a vertical line with the equal sign. I'm going to stop, chop, chop. And I see that I have a lonely variable there, so we're going to go ahead and give it a 1. So we're going to drive a 1 right through that. So it becomes -1a. As I see this problem, I have two denominators. I have a 3 and I have a 2. We're going to grab the biggest denominator of the 2, which is this one, and I'm going to pull it up front. That one's going to come out front. We're going to use the idea of the distributive property, which means I have to send it in 3 times. So I'm going to send it in the first time. I said 3 times 2 is 6. Divide by 3 is 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. Divide by 3 is 2. Send it in again. 3 times -1 is -3. Reattach the variable a. And on the right-hand side, we have 3 times 1 is 3. Divide by 2. So I go 3 times 1 is 3. Divide by 2 is 1.5. But I don't want the decimal. So I'm going to go ahead and go back a step and go, well, what did I type in? 3 times 1 is 3. Divide by 2. And I'm going to leave it as a fraction because I'm going to be able to kill this denominator by sending it in again, grabbing the new denominator of 2. So as I look at my problem here, I left the fraction in green on the right because I didn't want the decimal. So we're going to grab this denominator 2, and we're going to pull it up front, and we're going to send it using the distributive property. Our goal is to avoid all icky fractions, all icky decimals. So we distribute. 2 times 2 is 4, plus distribute. 2 times -3 is -6. Reattach the variable x, and we distribute again. 2 times 3 is 6. Divide by 2 is 3. The hand method kicks in at this point. So I take my hand, cover the variable, anything attached. I'll go ahead and highlight that for you. So this is what we want to get alone. So the 4, you got to go. See ya. You got to go. So we subtract 4, copy, paste. Subtract 4, copy, paste. If I haven't used it, drag it down is kicking in here. And on the right-hand side, we have 3, take away 4, which gives me -1. My goal is to get the variable to a totally alone, so I'm going to divide in this step because it's the opposite operation of multiplication. I'm going to divide by -6, copy, paste. So I get a equals a positive, because we have a negative divided by a negative, 0.16 repeating. And because I rounded it, I'm going to give it some squiggles. So the answer is -0.16 repeating. So this is the standard of how do I clear a denominator. We're solving equations hand method with fractions in it, but we do have to kill those fractions somehow. So there's 4 problems right there kind of giving you that skill. At this point for your retake, you can stop the video and just do those 4 for your retakes and submit that to me, and then you would be eligible for retake if all your homework's done. Otherwise, I will go through 2 additional examples of how we could solve some of these problems that have 3 denominators or multiple variables. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 more just as extra practice, but anybody that's doing a retake can stop the video now and submit it. So we draw a vertical line at the equal sign. We have 3 denominators. I'm going to take the biggest and pull it out front. Recognizing that there's a 1 here. We have a lonely variable. So we're going to distribute. We have 6 times 1 is 6. Divide by 6 gives me 1. Reattach the variable h. So we said 6 times 1 is 6. Divide by 6 is a 1. Reattach the variable h. Distribute. 6 times 2 is 12. Divide by 3 is 4. Distribute. 6 times 5 is 30. Divide by 4. So I go 6 times 5 is 30, divide by 4, and I end up with a decimal, and I don't want a decimal. So I'm going to leave what I just said in my calculator. 6 times 5 is 30, divide by 4, and I'm going to leave it as a fraction, and I will kill it in the next step. I'm going to go ahead and do one more step of this, killing the denominator by pulling it out front. So I'm going to take the 4 and pull it out front. This 4 I'm going to pull out front. Distribute. 4 times 1 is 4, reattach the variable x. 4 times 4 is 16. Go too fast, pause that video. I'm just trying to get through this video. So you pause and go at your own pace at any time. 4 times 30. Divide by 4 gives me 30. So I'm going to get left with just this really nice hand method question. And of course, it's going to have a decimal answer at the end, but that's okay. All the other work, we just killed those yucky fractions and have to find a common denominator. So we have the hand method here. So we're going to solve for 4h. We're going to subtract 16, copy, paste. Working left to right then, we end up with, if I haven't used it, drag it down. And 30 take away 16 is 14. I divide by 4, copy, paste. So we're just going 14 divide by 4. And my answer becomes 3.5. If that was way too fast for you, go ahead and pause. But that's just another example of how we kill denominators when there are 3 denominators and when the variable is kind of attached in a different place. That's a good example of that. So just solving equations with fractions is all we're working on right now. We're learning a different way to solve them without common denominators and without decimal form. Okay, last problem of this video. So we have a 6, a 2, and a 3. We're going to pull the biggest denominator out front, which is 6. And we're going to send it in using the distributive property, and it has to go in 3 times. Everybody gets the candy. So we go 6 times 5. 6 times 5 is 30. Divide by 6 is 5. Reattach the variable c. Sign in the middle is plus. Send it in again. 6 times 1 is 6. Divide by 2 is 3. Send it in again. 6 times 2 is 12. Divide by 3 is 4. So this one worked out really nice in that first step. Notice we killed all the denominators right from that first step, which is awesome. Hand method kicks in. I take my hand cover variable, anything attached. I'm going to subtract 3, copy, paste. If I haven't used it, I drag it down. So we get 5, c equals 1. Solving for c, I'm going to divide by 5, copy, paste. And we get c equals 0.2. Again, if that was too fast, go ahead and pause the video at any time. So if you're eligible for a retake, and that you would have to do those first 4 that were on the video, you have to submit it to me to show that you did that. I'll leave your notes, and then you can talk in class about what you need to do for your next step. Otherwise, this is just a tutorial on how we solve equations that have fractions, and we want to clear all denominators. Great job today, 7th grade. Have a fabulous day.